So greetings one and all. I thought we'd try something new this time. I thought we'd do a rather than a live broadcast, we'd try a recorded one, see how it goes, try out a new format, shall we say. So you may remember last Sunday, we covered the anti-vax protesters known as the freedom rallies or the freedom marches. And these were basically organized around the world by essentially outright conspiracy theorists to protest lockdowns, which, by the way, in the UK had pretty much ended at that point. And of course, they were protesting vaccinations. And one in particular, you may remember, the woman with blonde hair who was basically making threats against doctors and nurses, comparing what happened to the doctors and nurses at the Nuremberg trials when they were hung for their involvement. And she was getting people to give them doctors and nurses' names so that she could go after them illegally. Now, of course, I don't think she has an absolute leg to stand on a legal case. But what happened to this woman? Because remember, this woman was a former nurse. So it just goes to show you, no matter how smart or intelligent someone is, they can fall for conspiracy theories. And I've said this lots before, back when I used to debunk conspiracy theories back in the day, that conspiracy theorists are people who get cocooned. They take one strand, and then because they believe in this one conspiracy theory, well, now they have to believe in other conspiracy theories, or the one that they believe doesn't make any sense. So they end up cocooning themselves in this conspiracy webbing, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. But we've got this very interesting interview on LBC by her son, who's going to tell us how she got radicalized. And I think it's really important to listen to things like this so that you can know and you can understand and you can see symptoms and how to potentially stop this from happening to other friends and families from them going down this route. Because it's a lot easier than people think. It really is. People can get radicalized without sometimes even realizing it. We've talked, I don't know if we've talked before on this channel, but there's the alt-right rabbit hole, where people started very innocently watching people who maybe weren't exposing their far-right views, but were connected in other ways, or were giving just enough for people to, shall we say, be brought into the YouTube algorithm. And they started off watching very gentle people, and then they wound up at Sargon of Akkad, and then they wound up at Tommy Robinson. That's literally how the indoctrination went. They ended up there without even realizing it. And of course, they then started having and holding those extremist views. So it is important that we understand how radicalization works and what we can do to potentially stop it. So before we do jump into this video, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button down below. And of course, thank you to all the people that do hit those like and subscribe buttons. And also down below, there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, on with this video.
I don't think that my mum is worth responding to directly because, as I said in the first time I started speaking about this with colleagues on the BBC, she's too far gone to change her mind. The only thing you can do is try and convince other people to step away from what she's advocating for.
And that is a genuine shame. That is a serious, genuine shame. It's not the first time I have seen people who have had loved ones who have fallen to conspiracy theories do this and say this, that they are just too far gone. You can't say anything to them. The only thing you can do is stop other people and try and pull other people away from from listening to them or even, just debunking what they're saying. So I fully understand where he's coming from when he says that.
The problem with my mum's belief system is that unless people who are hearing her things for the first time are introduced to just how far those ideas go and what she believes in, like the maximum craziness of it, they can be lulled into this false sense of security where she's just criticizing vaccine passports or something like that. And this rally is a great example of it. She claims that she's doing a rally against vaccine passports, and she hijacks it and uses it to call for executions, it sounds like.
Yep. So, like I say, that's how innocent it can sound, because there might be genuinely people out there who are generally against the idea of vaccine passports. Okay, that's fine. The problem is, as he said, you can end up bit by bit believing in more and taking further steps to believe in that radicalization. So it is very, very dangerous just to think that lots of people there have been or were at that march who might have just been against the idea of a vaccine passport could have now been very well introduced to anti-vax conspiracy theorists. Again, this is something really worrying, and again, we have to watch out for.
So I'm used to this as far as our ideas get. They get very crazy, and I've always told people the best way to detox someone who's starting to say, hey, I'm listening to this person, is to say, okay, have you heard the full extent of what they say? Because they don't just talk about this. I'm inundated over the course of the past 2 months since I told my mum I was getting the vaccine myself. She's been sending text messages to me and my brother and sisters saying that my DNA is going to be changed, that the enzyme is by the devil, like created by the devil himself. This is as far as the ideas go.
Literally the devil.
That's as crazy as it gets. Yes.
Yep. As you can see, it's indoctrination bit by bit by bit. And it goes the same for people who fell down the alt-right rabbit hole, and it's the same people who end up falling for conspiracy theorists. They might generally have a serious, genuine interest in thinking, I don't want vaccine passports. Okay, fine. But look how far this went. Look about someone who basically maybe I'm just raising questions about this vaccine. But in reality, the other stuff they're saying is as he's just said. Oh, the vaccine is created by the devil. It will literally change your DNA. Something that it is literally physically impossible to do. To just change your DNA. And it's created by the devil. Think about this. This is the extent to where these beliefs go. And remember, there are people out there who think that David Icke is a saint and is some sort of martyr. But David Icke's theories end up with literally believing that people are lizard people. That is what he believes. And there are videos out of him there on YouTube of him saying that crazy stuff. And he actually genuinely believes it. That
Well, she claims the enzyme's name is luciferase, which is A1 kind of writing skills, but not really based in biology. That's beside the point. The point is that I'm used to as far as it gets. But these people that have been following my mum for the past 1.5 years, 2 years now, they've been taken down this slope, and it's been gradually spoon-fed to them. So,
yep. See what I told you? Spoon-fed, slowly but surely. Don't go full in. Give them bits and pieces. It's like, if you've ever heard of the roadmap of Scientology, how people end up falling for Scientology. They're brought in for these, quote, personality tests. And then they slowly get brought onto this. And then by about, I think it's like level 3, that's where they get introduced to Xenu and all that crazy nonsense. So as you can see, it's a very, very effective tactic for lulling people into this absolute anti-vaxxery nonsense.
So it makes sense they're getting more and more radical, and now we're seeing the apex of how crazy it gets. And there's only one more step in terms of how crazy it can get, and that's people actually getting hurt, and that's what my mum's now calling for. So this is the grand finale, if you like.
Is this in your view?
Yeah.
And that is what I'm worried about as well, because we've seen this isn't something you can say, oh, you're just worrying, you're overflating this. No, in the US, we have seen conspiracy theorists in the past go out and kill people, take people hostage. This has happened. So the logical next step for these anti-vaxxers is to start attacking vaccine centers, doctors and nurses who administer the vaccine. That is why it is incredibly dangerous when we saw her and that video of where she was calling for people to send her names of doctors and nurses who administrate this vaccine. It's very, very worrying, because he's right. That is the next step. That is what we could potentially see. And like I say, given the examples from America, it has happened before.
Sebastian, and again, thank you, because I know from personal experience, it must be a terribly difficult position for you to be in, having challenged a lot of the jihadist extremism from within Muslim communities. I know how difficult this can be on your own personal emotional health as well. Is this, in your view, a process of radicalization that is occurring?
Yes, and it's interesting because I've seen growing up, I watched my mum get more and more radicalized. Now, what's interesting about conspiracy theories as opposed to, I suppose, systemized radicalization like we would see in terrorist groups on the right or the left, is that the radicalization doesn't really happen from any particular leader, because although my mum is...
Yep, it's all about information. And it's the more people get spoon-fed this information, the more they want that information, the more they go looking for that information. Like I say, on YouTube right now, there are hundreds of thousands of anti-vax videos that you can find. Not only just anti-vax stuff, but alt medicine stuff, which promotes the absolutely most outrageous and dangerous forms of quackery. But they're out there on YouTube. You can very easily find them. I wouldn't recommend going down that rabbit hole, because trust me, it's horrific, but they're there out on YouTube.
Is the leader. The way I watched her get radicalized, she'd go on the internet and take little pieces of different people's philosophies. So it'll be, a Reddit post over here, a blog post over there. And it's almost like a leaderless, headless entity, this set of ideas. And the way that my mum got into it was she would just get sucked into reading more and more information. And anyone who disagreed with them.
Yep. Tell you what I said, bits and pieces. They get spoon-fed, they get more and more and more.
Mainstream was someone she would then take ideas on board. So it's a hodgepodge. It's impossible to fight, because there is no one person that you can put in jail to stop my mum from believing it. Now, my mum is the apex of the rest of the movement. So for the people who were in the rally, yes, my mum, David, Icke, these other people, they're the leaders. We need to deal with them. But for my mum herself, I watched her get radicalized in a really, I guess, decentralized way. And that's why it's so hard to fight, because you can't discredit the sources when she's using 1,000 sources a day. You can only discredit the actual framework of the ideas themselves. It's much tougher to argue against.
Yep. As I said at the beginning, these people get spoon-fed these types of things. They go from one thing to another, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. They start to follow more strands, and the more of those strands they follow, the more they end up cocooning themselves, because if you believe one strand, well, now you've got to believe this other strand. And what about this other strand that this other person tells you about? And they end up literally cocooning themselves within their own, conspiracy bubble. But that is exactly what happens to these people. And, it's absolutely shocking, but that's the case. And that's how radicalization happens. Will there be violence from this? I hope not. I genuinely hope not. But remember, after Priti Patel warned about, the do-gooder lawyers, there was an immigration law office attacked. People don't talk about that, but that actually happened. So the worrying thing is, as he said as well, and I completely agree with him, the next logical step for these people is to start attacking vaccine centres and doctors and nurses. And I worry we could see that. Now, will it be just a one-off? Well, I hope that's what ends up happening. But just a few weeks ago, before the big Freedom March rally, Piers Corbyn led a group of people to force out a bus that had been set up to deliver vaccines and to act as like a mobile vaccine centre. And they forced that bus to move on, to move away, and they took it as a victory. Now, of course, that didn't lead to violence, but there's nothing that could have said that these people might have started to try and tip and overturn that bus. Could have potentially happened. Like I say, unfortunately, the seeds for this violence have been planted, and we need to actually start taking it seriously. And you need to, if you see anyone from your family start to do this, then you need to start sending them information to counter what they're talking about. And it can be hard. Just as he said, they might be feeding hundreds of different thousands of bits of information. And trust me, I once went on a conspiracy podcast, and literally we were talking about the JFK assassination. And I was like, this is not a conspiracy theorist, because how about this? What do you say to that? And they say, oh, but what do you think to this instead? Well, how about, this, because this doesn't make sense. And they literally just kept on bringing more and more stuff into it, because there was just so many conspiracy theories that they can just keep on pulling off the shelf. And eventually you will be able to get to the end of that shelf, but I'll tell you what, it'll be difficult. And some people are so far gone, you might never be able to reach them. But some people you might be able to drag back to some form of reality. So it is worth doing it, especially if they are, friends and family. So be aware of that. So as always, thank you for watching. Like I say, we're trying out a new different sort of video format. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the video. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.